Alistair Cooke and the 18th Omnibus, which today contains two features, an opera and a mountain climb. Now, for 30 years, men have been looking up to the high Himalayas and trying and planning and failing to stand on top of the world. But last spring, 14 men got within 800 feet of the summit, and their leader, Sir John Hunt, chose two of them to make this short last stretch, which has always defied or killed its challengers. They were a New Zealand beekeeper, Sir Edmund Hillary, and a native guide, Tenzing. And at 11:30 in the morning on the 29th of May, the whole earth lay beneath them.
On the right, there are tremendous fingers of ice hanging over this great Kangshung face, about 18,000 feet high. And we had to keep off those, because if you step on a cornice, it gives way under you and precipitates you down the face. We're starting to slow down a bit, we're getting a little tired, and I think we're almost getting a little desperate in our seeking for the summit. Well, I cut round the back of one ridge and round the back of another ridge, and the summit never seemed to be coming any closer. But finally, I cut round the back of another one and saw that the ridge ahead dropped steeply away. So I looked up, and there was a little rounded cone above us, and I knew it was the summit.
All that was needed was a few more blows of the ice axe, and Hillary and Tenzing stood on the summit of Mount Everest.
I'm James Morris of the London Times. Last year, as special correspondent of my newspaper, I went along to Everest with the British expedition that took Sherpa Tenzing and Ed Hillary to the top of the mountain. Everest is a Himalayan peak lying bang on the frontier between Nepal and Tibet. The one just emerging from medievalism under the guidance of the West, the other a country under communist domination and therefore closed to the likes of us. I think I can best describe the size of this mountain by comparing it with some objects that will be more familiar to you. For example, the Empire State Building, the highest structure ever erected by man, is 1,250 feet high. The highest mountain in northwestern United States is Mount Washington, 6,288 feet. The highest mountain anywhere in the United States is Mount Whitney, 14,495 feet. Everest is 29,002 feet, a big mountain. Our expedition wasn't, of course, the first to go to Everest. Over the past 30 years, 11 others have gone there, some of them to find a route to and up the mountain, and some of them to make an actual assault on the summit. They've all learnt their lessons, and I'm told that in all, 16 men died during these earlier attempts. One of the most distinguished of them was the expedition of 1924. This one was made famous and terrible by the disappearance during it of two celebrated climbers, George Lee Mallory and Robert Irvin, who were last seen climbing towards the summit. In those days, it was Nepal that was closed to the west, and their route to Everest lay through Tibet, the northern side. These pictures were taken on the Rongbuk Glacier on the northern side of Everest on Tibetan soil. They look quaint and antique figures by our standards, and their equipment was primitive, but the hazards were just the same. And even at the relatively low altitudes where these photographs were taken, there were perils to be faced as there are now. They're crossing crevasses by means of snow bridges. Sometimes these are firm and will bear your weight. Sometimes they are deceptive and plunge men into crevasses. This man was pulled out safely, but in a moment we are going to see one of the saddest of mountain pictures. Not long before Mallory disappeared, somebody took a movie film of him and two companions through the lens of a telescope. And these pictures, which have been passed on to us, are the last which were ever taken of this great climber before he vanished into the high mists of Everest. Climbing a mountain of this magnitude, as you will imagine, is a problem of great difficulty, and not least a logistical problem, because one has to take large quantities of materials and food high on the mountain so that men can climb up to the top of it. These problems were realized particularly clearly, I think, by the leader of our expedition, Colonel Sir John Hunt, a regular army officer. Suppose we let John tell us something about them himself.
The scale of Everest is so huge that you could almost think of it as three mountains, one on top of the other. The first mountain starts at the base camp at a height of 18,000 feet and goes up into the western combe, round about here, at 21,200 feet. There, the second mountain begins. It ends on the south col, here, at 26,000 feet. And then comes the third, on to the summit. What we had to do was to get up 3 tons of stores, equipment, and oxygen from base camp up into the combe. From there, we had to get at least 500 pounds up here onto the south col.
I am Charles Evans, and in ordinary life, I work as a surgeon in England. On this expedition, I was Sir John Hunt's deputy. Before we ever went to the mountain, we had 6 months of hard work back in England getting ready for it. And in that time, hundreds of people worked hard to make sure that we had the best of everything in the way of equipment for our adventure. Tents, clothes, boots, oxygen equipment, 101 things that the climber must have. Our first problem was to transport all this stuff from Kathmandu across 170 miles of mountain and jungle to the foot of Everest itself. When we left Kathmandu, we took with us nearly 400 porters. Here they are, each of them carrying his load of 60 pounds over the little tracks of Nepal. By April, we had reached our base camp at the foot of the mountain at 18,000 feet. And there we got ready to go on to the upper part of the mountain. This thing with which I'm going to show you the mountain is an ice axe, such as we used on it. Here's the top of Everest. And away to the south there is Lhotse, the 4th highest mountain in the world. Over here is Nuptse, which is 26,000 feet high. And these 3 mountains enclose a great valley called the Western Combe. Between Everest and Lhotse, there is a dip in the ridge, the South Col, and it was to this that we were to go. The Western Combe here is a lake, a great lake of ice, which is slowly emptying itself towards the west. And at the lip of the Combe, at this point, the slopes down which the ice comes become very steep, and for 2,000 feet, the ice tumbles down in a mass of irregular blocks down here towards our base camp. This part is called the ice fall, and this line on the model shows you the way we were going to go up. Our first problem here was to transport 3 tons of stores from our base camp to the middle of the Combe. And now we're going to see a film showing what it was like going up through the ice fall. Day after day, for 3 weeks, we and the porters went up and down the ice fall, ferrying loads. There were great big chasms between the blocks of ice, and sometimes we had to bridge them with planks of wood, sometimes with aluminium bridges, Sometimes we had to fix ladders so that a steep section could be passed in safety. Here's one of the ladders up at the top of the icefall. Just above this, there was a particularly wide crevasse, chasm in the ice, which we bridged with an aluminium bridge. This part of the mountain, the icefall, is not merely difficult, it is also dangerous, because the blocks of ice are liable to come tumbling down as avalanches, and people lying in their path would get swept out of the way and killed, and it was part of our job, if we could, to find a route which avoided such avalanches.